Some things are never meant to be found. This is one of them. The explorer had always been drawn to abandoned places. There was something about walking through buildings everyone else had left behind that kept pulling him back. Over the years, he'd explored dozens of them: old hotels, factories, warehouses, houses left to rot, filming each visit for his channel. But he wasn't searching for ghosts. In fact, he didn't believe in them at all. He'd built his channel on one simple premise: fear makes ordinary things feel supernatural. Creaking pipes became footsteps. Settling wood became whispers. And every single time, he'd found the same thing: an empty building with a good story attached to it. Nothing more. Schools were his favorite. Not because of the old textbooks or forgotten lockers, but because schools attracted the best stories: bells ringing on their own, footsteps in empty hallways, chairs that moved when no one was looking. Every abandoned school was a new challenge: is there actually something here? And so far, the answer had always been no. He'd heard about this one through the usual channels: vague posts, second-hand stories, the kind of local legend that grows louder the less anyone can actually confirm. People talked about sounds coming from inside, long after it had been shut down. That was enough for him. Not because he believed it. Because he wanted to prove, once again, that he didn't have to. He arrived before sunset. The sky was clear, the air still, nothing dramatic about the moment at all, just an old brick building standing quiet at the edge of an empty lot. He set up his camera, gave his usual introduction, and said what he always said: an empty building with a good story attached to it. Then he went in. The first part of the exploration was calm, almost pleasant. Long hallways lined with faded lockers, classrooms full of desks arranged in careful rows, chalkboards still holding the ghost of old handwriting, a small library with books no one had opened in years. He narrated as he walked, relaxed and confident. A sound in the ceiling, probably an animal. A door that shifted slightly. He found the draft himself, traced it back to a broken window down the hall. He was, as always, completely at ease. In one classroom, near the back, he noticed a desk and chair older than the rest, different wood, worn in a way that suggested decades more use than everything around it. The surface of the desk was covered in scratches, names, lines carved by bored students long gone. And in the center, deeper and clearer than anything else, a single number. 9. He didn't react the way people expect. He ran his thumb over the carving and said, almost fondly, someone really wanted that to stay. He filmed it for a few seconds, then moved on. Minutes later, in a hallway far from that classroom, he heard it. Scrape. The unmistakable sound of a wooden chair being dragged slowly across a floor. He stopped. Listened. Nothing. He laughed it off for the camera. Old buildings settle, old buildings make noise, but the sound had come from the direction of the classroom he'd just left. So he went back. Everything in the room looked normal. Except for the old chair. He was almost certain it had been pushed in close to the desk. Now it sat pulled back, just slightly. Not dramatically. Just enough to make him question whether he was remembering it correctly. Rather than react, he did what he always did: he investigated. He checked the floor for unevenness, found a slight tilt that could explain it. Then, smarter than most people in his position, he took a clear photo of the chair's exact position. Now he had proof. Now, whatever happened next, he'd know for certain. He kept moving. Somewhere in another part of the building, mid-sentence to the camera, a school bell rang. Clear. Unmistakable. and impossible. There was no working electricity anywhere in this building. For the first time, his expression changed. Not fear exactly, more like the sharp attention of someone recalculating. He searched for a source. An old mechanical system, a stray battery, anything. He found nothing. Not long after, footsteps. Not running, not exaggerated, just ordinary footsteps in the hallway, the kind you'd expect from someone walking calmly from one classroom to another. He called out, "Hello," no answer. He followed the sound. No one was there. From here, things began sliding out of alignment, slowly and quietly. He'd backtracked through a hallway he was certain he recognized, only to find himself somewhere he'd already been. A door he remembered leaving open was now shut. A staircase he expected wasn't where he thought it should be. Nothing supernatural, nothing. The walls themselves were doing just enough wrongness to make him tell himself, "I must be getting turned around in here." Then, again, scrape. This time from above. He went up. Nothing. Later, from a distant classroom. Then from behind a closed door. And he began to notice something that unsettled him more than the sound itself. The scraping always seemed to follow the bell. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Bell. Footsteps. The sound of a chair. Silence. Then, after a stretch of quiet, it would happen again. The building wasn't behaving like an abandoned school. It was behaving like school was still in session. He remembered the photo he'd taken. He went back to the original classroom to compare it against the chair's current position. The desk was still there. The chair was gone. He had a photo. He knew exactly where it had been. He knew, with certainty, that he hadn't moved it. And now it simply wasn't there. He searched. In another classroom, he found it sitting among a completely different set of desks and chairs. Same wood. Same design. Same scratches along its legs. He didn't turn it over. He didn't need to. The bell rang again. Later, in yet another classroom, the chair had moved once more. As if it were being carried from class to class with every ring of the bell. As if something that wasn't there was still attending its lessons. He never said it out loud. He didn't need to. The idea had already formed on its own. The footsteps began following him directly. At first, they'd been distant. Now, after the bell rang again, they started behind him. He walked. Tap, tap, tap. He stopped. The footsteps stopped. He walked again. They returned. He turned around. The hallway was empty. For the first time in the entire recording, real fear crossed his face. He tried to make his way back toward the classroom where it had all started. He reached the door. The chair had returned. Pushed in neatly against the desk, exactly where it had been at the very beginning. This time, he didn't go inside. He stood at the doorway. Silence. Then, from somewhere inside the room, low and close, "You're late." No explanation of who said it. No answer to what he was late for. This was the moment that ended his confidence completely. The man who had spent years explaining away every strange sound in every abandoned building had nothing left to say. He didn't announce a ghost. He didn't offer a theory. He simply said, "I'm leaving." He moved toward the entrance he'd come in through. The door wouldn't open. He tried another exit. Also sealed shut. Then the bell rang again, and this time, he didn't wait to hear what came next. He moved fast. As he passed through the hallway, classroom doors began slamming shut behind him, one after another. Bang. 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 As if the school day had ended, and the building was closing itself down, door by door. No figure. No shape in the shadows. Just the sound, closing in behind him. He found an old side door. It didn't budge at first. The footsteps grew closer behind him. He tried again. It gave way, and he was outside. He didn't look back until he was well clear of the building. The sun was nearly gone. The school stood completely still behind him. No sound. No movement. No one at the windows. Whatever had been happening inside seemed to end the moment he stepped out. That night, he reviewed his footage. He returned to the recording from the first time he'd entered the classroom. Something near the edge of the frame caught his attention. He rewound it. Just before he stepped through the classroom door, the camera had briefly captured the hallway behind him. At the far end of it stood the old chair, just outside another classroom. He paused the footage. Then he pressed play. The recording continued without a cut. Seconds later, he walked into the classroom and approached the old desk. The chair was already there. He rewound it again. Then again. There was no edit, no missing footage, no gap in the recording. The same chair had appeared at the far end of the hallway, and seconds later, it was sitting inside the classroom. There hadn't been enough time for anyone to move it. And no one had passed him. He never posted the episode. His audience waited for the next upload that never came. Not long after, he stopped exploring abandoned places altogether. The man who had built his entire channel on proving that ghosts weren't real never once said that he'd changed his mind. He just never walked into another empty building again. If you ever find something that shouldn't exist, leave it where it is. This has been The Ninth Whisper.
The Ninth Whisper.